Today on Isolation Nation, remember show 21 and the debacle of the name? Hrudey. Kelly Hrudey. Oh, I struggled badly with the H, but I finally got it. Kelly Hrudey.
Oh,
I nailed that.
If you were to ask my dad, in fact, he would say it's Hrudey.
Oh, Hrudey.
Hrudey.
Hrudey?
Hrudey.
Hrudey or Hrudey?
Hrudey.
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 Use it in a sentence.
Hello, Mr. Hrudey.
Ah, this is so frustrating. Can I get some help?
Father.
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 Hrudey.
Hrudey. I got it. Hrudey. Ask me what day it is, Case.
What day is it?
It's Hrudey. It's Hrudey. Man, don't say another word. I am nailing it.
Hrudey, Hrudey, Hrudey.
F*** off.
Hrudey, Hrudey, Hrudey.
I had so much fun doing that, giggling and amusing myself and trying to do what I accomplished what I wanted to do, which is get a big smile from the two of you, dear friend Kelly Hrudey and dear friend Kaitlin Hrudey, not just Kelly Hrudey's daughter, but somebody that I have liked and admired and watched, and good to see both of you. Thanks for coming on the show, Kaitlin.
Thank you for having us. This is
How you doing?
great. I'm doing pretty well, actually. My fiance is super supportive of me and my family too. So I have a great support system that helps me stay happy and healthy. So
that is, from a father standpoint, I see this big smile on your face, Kelly, which is actually a good thing because it's distracting me from the part that the hair that is going on right now. And I have the same thing, but the only place I really noticed is right here, right? It just gets sort of like wingy.
Oh, yeah. This is all hair sprayed back, and I've got a full-on mullet now. I think I was telling Corey, your son, that the last time I got a haircut, I believe was in February. So we're going back for an old guy like me. That's way too long to go.
Yeah, I'm finding exactly the same thing. But you were saying you're getting your haircut next week?
Yes, Monday. I'm not sure what the restrictions are in other places around the world or North America, but us in Alberta, I think it opened up just a couple days ago here, and everybody has to wear a face mask. And I believe I don't think there could be a screen between us.
No.
I'm not sure, but
it's face masks, probably gloves too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. I need it desperately.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Number one, I think that it's probably still illegal, but they're giving a special dispensation just so the whole population doesn't, have to look at the wings on the side. So let's, my son, by the way, Corey, is standing by as well. This is father-child, Isolation Nation. I'm talking about mental health from all perspectives, and I'm really pumped for this. So why don't you, Kaitlin, give us a tiny bit of your backstory, just the part that we need to know to follow up my question, which was, how you doing?
So when I was in grade 7, I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder. It was really bad. I had this attachment to my parents, especially my mom, where I would just need to be with them 24/7. And most of my thoughts and worries at that point had to do with getting a disease or dying, some sort of idea like that. I started seeing a psychologist in grade 7, and it changed my life. And it was a lot of hard work put in by me and my family to get me better. And like most people with a mental illness, I've had ups and downs, but right now I'm on an up, and I'm just riding it until it stops.
Right. And so I want to get perspective on, I know the answer to this, but has this detracted from the quality of your life at certain times? Has the illness been the number one thing that existed in your head at certain times? Because what people tend to do is they tend to say, oh, you know what? Like every kid has attachment to his parents or her parents. Every kid has fears of dying. That's just totally normal. So I know the answer, but this was not a small thing for you, right?
No, it started off thoughts in my head about those things that I could kind of brush off and distract myself enough that I would think about something else. But it just started to consume me, and it started on this loop that I talk about, where it's just, I get a thought and it gets in a loop and it just gets stuck, and I just think over and over and over. And it got to a point where I didn't do anything. I used to love to dance, and I wouldn't go to dance. I used to love friends and sleepovers. I wouldn't do any of that. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. It was just, my whole life was revolved around my thoughts and the obsessive thoughts that I had. Yeah.
That's really well expressed. You know, a lot of people can't do what you can do, which is to in a matter-of-fact way, describe how this has affected your life. And I saw you on stage, I guess, I don't know, it must be like 5 years ago now. It's crazy, at Mike Babcock's event. So, Kelly, hearing that and having obviously have been a big part of that, but seeing, you know, this silent or this invisible illness affect your daughter, how has it most affected you?
Oh, how it most affect me? Boy, in so many different ways. You know, I just think of the determination that Kaitlin had to have, and that Donna and I and Caitlin's sisters also, we had to come up with this new determination and new strength that we didn't know we had. We didn't know we had it in us. And the strength that all of us, I think, gathered from this has really made us strong. Like through this whole thing, we had to talk to Caitlin's sisters about what she was going through, so that there wasn't any frustration on their part. And why are you spending all this time with Kaitlin? And I don't think they ever expressed it, but maybe I might have thought that they weren't getting the time they needed or the consideration. So all those sorts of things. And as Kaitlin said, it was a battle. Like when early on, she really hated us and she fought us.
And I let them know how much.
Yes.
So, okay. So there's two things that don't seem to go together. On one hand, you said that you needed to be with your parents 24 hours a day. Did that coincide with you? I won't say you hated your parents, but the friction that existed between you. Were the two simultaneous in your brain?
Well,
Stop drinking, Kelly. Yeah, go ahead.
At first, yeah, it started off with, if I don't want all these bad things to happen that are stuck in my head, I have to be with my parents. But when they found out that, and through therapy with the psychologist and everything, we had to detach kind of, you know, and I needed to do things on my own. And because they made me separate and go to school, go to dance class, all those things, I hated them for it. Well, I said I hated them. Yeah. I hated the work that I needed to do. I never hated them.
Right. Well, I mean, I totally, like what you just said makes 100% sense. And it makes sense because, like, on one hand, you have all these fears. How old were you at the time?
12, I believe. Okay.
So you're 12 years old. You haven't even had your bat mitzvah yet. And you never got a bat mitzvah? Oh my gosh, that you know, Kelly. So you have these really painful thoughts and these terrible fears, and yet your parents are throwing at you things that ultimately will help you, but in the short run are bringing these fears on you, right? So like the things that you feared the most, they were forced to do, I guess, to desensitize you.
Yep, exactly. And being that young, I think too, I didn't really understand or trust that doing those things would make me feel better and would help me get through this. So I had even more like anger towards doing those things.
Yeah. You know, hold on one sec, Kelly. I want to lighten this a bit. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess, you know, my smart ass comment about put the water down and did you have a bat mitzvah and why not, you know, maybe doesn't need lightning, but we have a theme song on this show with one of the best stand-up comedians in this country. He wrote a theme song for us, and he tailors it from time to time for a guest. And this one is for you, Kelly. It is Sean Cullen theme song. Roll it, Phil.
It's a nation in isolation. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. The H beginning of Hrudey is a silent exhalation. Kelly Hrudey, he stopped the puck. He wore a headscarf. Hey, what the F? He was a goalie. He played the game, but no one could say the H at the beginning of his name. Yeah, it's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Get a shovel and do an excavation. Yeah.
He's just so delightful. If that doesn't make you smile,
Right.
then you're never going to smile. There's just something about him that's just so lovable too.
That was very, very clever. I appreciated it more this time than the first time. Maybe because I was more nervous going on the show just by myself last time. I have the comfort now of having Kaitlin, so she could guide me through.
He's great. So here's my plan, and I'm kind of throwing it out there for the first time. I want to get a choir to actually sing that. I want to build it into something because it's fun, and because the nature of this show is to balance off, the painful and the truthful and the honesty and, the fact that mental illness can be devastating, and measure that off with fun. So if you know a choir, and I'm not talking to just you two guys, but people watching, if you know a choir, let us know. Okay, let's welcome our fourth guest, or I guess our third guest. I wouldn't qualify as a guest, and neither does he really, because he's family. Corey Landsberg, come on down, or come on in, or however you refer to it on Zoom. Hey, Cor.
How's it going, guys?
Good. So, Corey, you.
There's Carl. He, as soon as he hears me talking, I guess he thought someone walked in the front door. He goes nuts. But you asked me at what, 4:57 if I would join?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, when else am I going to get a chance to tell Kelly Hrudey how much I hated him in 1993 when the Kings beat the Leafs and I was sitting on the edge of my parents' bed crying like a little baby while they were at the game and lied to me that they were going. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, this is really bad. Man, do I hate Kelly Hrudey. Hated you so much back then.
Okay, well, you've been waiting a long time to say that. So let's, the way this shook down is I was talking to Kelly and Kaitlin before the show. And, Kaitlin, you were talking about specifically the things that were wrapped up into your anxiety and OCD. And then I thought, hey, man, do I have a friend for you? Cor, you heard Kaitlin telling her story. I mean, there's some really bizarrely freakish things that you have in common, Cor.
Oh yeah, I mean, it sounded exactly like me. And so you said you were in grade 7 when you first realized? I think my parents knew that I was suffering from anxiety well before that, but I think I was actually diagnosed with it in like grade 6. So we're probably almost the exact same age. And your symptoms sound exactly like what I go through. Like I worry about everything to do with health all the time. Like I get on the bike and I ride it for half an hour, and then I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good. And then I get off the bike and I look at my heart rate monitor. I'm like, well, yesterday my heart rate after riding the bike dropped. It was 5 beats per minute lower than it is right now. Do I have a problem with my heart? Like that kind of thing happens to me all the time. And hearing you say that, I thought to myself, like, oh man, we're the exact same person.
Yep, that's really crazy though. Like, I know what you mean about that. It's just anything to do with health, I just latch onto it and obsess and think that I have that problem.
Hey, Mike, can I ask Corey a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Corey, oftentimes when we'd be around and when Kaitlin was doing well, one of my favorite things to do is watch the nightly news. And there would be all these tragic stories, right? And oftentimes I'd be watching a story. In fact, there was a dairy farm in British Columbia. Unfortunately, they spread the E. coli disease around, and a number of people tragically lost their life and everything. I look over at Kaitlin, and her eyes are about this big. And I'm wondering, do you have the same sort of experiences where you might be watching the news and something health-wise comes up, and all of a sudden you think you might be in the same situation?
Okay, let me answer your question by asking Kaitlin a question. Last year, when the romaine lettuce salmonella or E. coli or whatever it was scare happened, did you eat romaine lettuce at all for like 6 months? Because I know I didn't.
So if it were up to me, I wouldn't have. But my fiance's mom is a dietitian, and my fiance said, no, it's good now, so we can eat it. But if it were just up to me, I probably still wouldn't even be eating it.
So like, I love salad. I eat it every single night, but there was about, I would say, a 4 to 5 month period where I refused to eat it because I heard on the news that there was a farm in California where there was an outbreak. And like you were saying, E. coli, salmonella, whatever it was, as soon as I heard that, I was like, nope, I'm done. I'll eat the leaves off the tree outside before I eat lettuce. Like it's not happening. So yes, I'm exactly the same. Like it's to be honest, the biggest fear that I had when I was younger, and it's not so much a huge fear that I have today, but it's vomiting. And when I was a kid, I had this fear. Like I haven't puked since I was 8 years old. I've had that streak, the Jerry Seinfeld streak, going for that long. And I intend to keep it going as long as I can. But the thought of vomiting, or the thought of being in a room with someone who is sick, it scares the crap out of me. And if you want to see someone move fast, just have someone vomit in the same room as me, and I'm out of there like the road runner.
I can confirm that. As a matter of fact, the room I'm in, I believe that occurrence has happened. I think Case was standing, Corey, you would see.
I would say 6 feet beside, six feet to your right, and the chunks started flying, and I took off. I was gone.
This is fascinating. Kaitlin Hrudey, Kelly Hrudey, Michael Landsberg, Corey Landsberg, father-daughter, father-son, struggling with anxiety, the two offspring and the two parents trying to do their best for their kids with an illness that is very difficult to understand. I think it was easier for me though, Kelly, because I experienced the same thing. I mean, I continue to experience many of the same things. But when I was a kid, if I was in this conversation, I would have been saying, oh my God, Kaitlin, me too. Oh my gosh. My family doctor, I must have seen him, I don't know, 100 times over the course of my time going to see him. And that was probably over 30 years. But 3-4 times a year, I'd be so panicked that I would go in there and he'd say, why are you here? And I would tell him, and he goes, you're okay. Just let me tell you right now, you're okay. And I'll be like, okay, I forgot about the whole thing. Never thought about it again. I mean, I was sure I had MS one day. And I went in there and he said, what do you think's wrong with you? And I said, MS. And he said, why? And I said, well, I have weakness in both my legs. He goes, then it's not MS. You wouldn't have it in both legs. It would start on one side. So I go, really? He goes, yeah. I go, okay, I'm done.
Boy, Michael, this is fascinating too, because when Kaitlin's in a good place and we can joke around, you talked about using humor. I will just casually, I won't do it every day, but when I remember to get a little bit of a laugh out of her, I'll go, so what's going on today? What illness do you have? And then she'll explain.
I've had a brain tumor for a while now.
Yeah, that is, and it's, the brain tumor is, I think that fear is for people that suffer from, fear of getting sick and dying. I think the brain tumor is kind of like the ground floor. That's, we all kind of think about that. And then okay, I'm going to ask the two of you questions. When I say the two of you, not you, Kelly, because I'm going to ask Kaitlin and Corey. Yep. Kaitlin, the internet, is it your friend when it comes to this or your enemy?
My enemy. Definitely.
I totally see that. I mean, I kind of knew what the answer was going to be. Cor?
Oh, are you kidding? It scares the shit out of me. Every time I go on there and I think to myself, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. A month ago, I had this, like, I started to get lightheaded, and then I had these like weird, it was called an aura in my eyes. And it turns out it was just a migraine. And I Googled it, and the first thing that came up was migraine. Like, this, if this is what your symptoms are, you're seeing zigzag lines across your eyes, it's a migraine. And I've had migraines before. I had a migraine 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and it didn't happen. So I'm like, okay, good. It's just a migraine. It's not a brain tumor. And then my anxiety takes it to a whole other level where it says to me, no. It can't just be that you have a migraine. You must have a brain tumor on top of a migraine, because the last time you had a migraine, you didn't have that symptom. So I have this way of perpetuating every single symptom I have into worst case scenario. And then it ends up becoming this like vicious cycle where all I want to do is be reassured of something. And I think to myself, okay, great, I'll Google these symptoms. And then the symptoms come up and I'm like, all right, I'm good. It's just a migraine. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, wait, hold on. What happens if I got it wrong? Like, do I have to go and recheck everything?
Yeah.
Like, I do that all the time. And I'm sure, talking to someone who has suffered from anxiety the same way I have, I am sure you've done the same thing. Happen.
So I am so tempted to do that all the time, but my psychologist has made me promise that I won't ever Google any symptoms of anything that I'm having, because it will just lead to bad things for me. So he made me promise, and I haven't done it. But
mine did too, and I didn't listen. He said to me the exact same thing, and he said, I remember this conversation. He said, yeah, I wouldn't. I told him, like, every single time I feel anything, it's always worst case scenario. And the first thing I do is I go and Google it. Like, is that what it is? And he said, yeah, I don't think you should be doing that. The first thing I would do if you're feeling anxious is I would get away from your computer and get away from your phone, because you're only going to make it worse.
Yep.
And I said, yeah, I agree with you. And he goes, are you going to do that? I go, nope, definitely not. I love to have the self-control to do that, but I definitely do not.
It's crazy though, Kelly. As a parent in this dynamic, I assume two different rules. On one hand, I assume the role of being the comforter, as does Karen, my wife, right? When Corey had the aura, he called here and Karen said, I'm sure it's a migraine, because I get that. And then I went on. But, it's the other part of it for me is like same thing for me. I mean, what things have you Googled, Kaitlin?
I don't remember the last thing I Googled when it comes to symptoms or anything.
Well, that's good.
One time though, when I got my dog in the last couple years, she was having some bad symptoms. I don't want to get really graphic or anything, but she wasn't feeling well. And I Googled her symptoms about it, and everything that came up about her was just horrible. She's okay now, but I've learned that it's just not a good idea, and just bring all the information to the doctor, and that's their job.
Yeah, I did the same thing for our last dog, and he passed away about 1.5 years ago. But I would, if he had a tiny bump on him, Casey, who doesn't worry about herself, but has had reasons actually to worry about herself in the past, with the dog, adores the dog like we all do, and would say, what is this? And then I would go, I don't think it's anything, but you can never say for sure. Yeah. So I Googled, bumps on dogs, and I'm looking at them and I'm seeing all these terrible pictures, and it says, it doesn't matter if it says 99% of these things are benign. It's like, okay, well, there's a 1%, right? The same thing for me personally. I mean, this is, I've never learned not to Google. I go to the doctor. I mean, as you start to get older, besides getting puffy hair on the sides of your head, you have health issues, which obviously, become more frequent. And I would just drive myself crazy, because it's like, okay, what is this? The symptom finder, and it says, this could be, it could be this, and I'm going, okay, I'm good with this, I'm good with these, I can handle that, this, or cancer. And it's like, It's cancer. I can't believe my luck. I have cancer for sure.
Totally.
This is Carl, by the way. Carl is my dog, and he was sniffing around on the floor, and I didn't want him to do anything bad, so I picked him up.
Oh, he's
He's pretty cute.
Yeah, but okay, so I'll give you a perfect example of how my brain works. On Monday night, my wife and I were eating dinner. I made chicken wings. They were actually quite good. And as we're cleaning up, this monster jumped on the table and grabbed a wing, a full chicken wing, runs around the kitchen with it, he knows that we have to take it away from him, right?
Right.
He swallows the whole thing, whole.
Ooh.
I start panicking immediately. I say to my wife, call the vet right now. Like, we got to figure out what the hell's going on. So she calls the vet, and the vet says, you know, I'm almost certain he'll be okay. Chicken wings are easy for them to dissolve. This happens more frequently than you would think. But if it was a beef bone, then you would have to bring him in. So I said, okay, like, are you sure about that? Like, I just want reassurance at that point that the dog's gonna be okay. Yeah, he'll be fine. And then as an idiot, I say to him, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And he goes, well, worst case scenario is that the bone could puncture his stomach lining and then something bad could happen. I said, all right, if we get there in 10 minutes, can you see him? He goes, yep, no problem. Drive like a maniac to get to the vet. He takes him in, he gives him an x-ray, and he says, I'm almost certain he'll be okay. I didn't sleep at all that night. All I was thinking about, he was almost certain. If he would have said, I'm certain he'll be okay, I would have been fine. I would have slept like no problem. Instead of that, I'm up all night watching the dog and like, is he going to get off the bed and is he going to start dry heaving? Am I going to have to rush him to the emergency room? And it was a bad night, but that's the way that my anxiety works. And I love the dog the exact same as my wife does. She slept just fine because he said to her, I'm almost certain he'll be okay. And she looked at it as from the perspective of someone who doesn't suffer from anxiety. And I looked at it from someone with a chronic panic disorder where the only thing I could think of is worst case scenario.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions. This is a fun one. I'm going to ask you a question, Kaitlin, that is not what it sounds like. Okay. So it sounds like you'd go, oh my God, I can't believe he asked that question. But here's the question. Have you ever made the walk of shame? So now you're going, yeah, he's right. It is kind of a weird question to ask. And by the walk of shame, here's what I mean. It's you're sleeping over at a friend's house and you panic, right? Because you're going, I got to be at home. There's no way I can sleep here. So you call your parents and say, okay, well, can you come pick me up? So the walk from your friend's room down to the front door to be greeted and picked up by one of your parents is what we called in our house the walk of shame.
I can't even tell you how many times I've had that happen to me.
Sorry for clapping, but it's just like, it's bizarre. Keep going.
Your analogy of with the sleepover and leaving a sleepover and you can't spend the night. I feel that way about a lot of things that I went through. Just leaving school early or dance class early and everyone's there having fun and I'm leaving. And most recently that feeling I think was from when I left UBCO in Kelowna. I was there for about a month and then things started getting really bad and I couldn't handle it anymore. So my parents said, like, we all had a good talk and said, I think that I need to come home and get better. And just leaving the university, the dorm room, all that, I had that feeling of just like, it was kind of like relief because I'm like, I know this is what I need to do, but I had a lot of embarrassment about it. And yeah, I mean, it was hard.
And Kelly, did you do the pickup on one of these many nights when the not referred to back in that day by you as the walk of shame, but now feel free to describe it that way?
I would have been on a few of them. Donna most likely more often because I would think most of them would have been on weekends and I would have been in Toronto or someplace working. But I was the pickup guy in Kelowna when she had to go home from university. So that was a very tough experience. I got to tell you, I'm going to fess up to something here. So there might be parents out there watching and thinking, you know, Kelly or Michael seem like great parents and they're very supportive of their son or daughter and so on. And I like to think we have been, but there have been times, one time in particular, when I went to get Kaitlin, I got mad at her and I didn't tell her. I was in the car by myself and I was talking to my lovely wife, Donna, about it. And she so beautifully reminded me that don't get mad at Kaitlin. She doesn't want to go through this. Be mad at her illness. And it was such a good way for me to once again remind myself about that. I did that one time with Donna when she was mad at Kate. So I want to just send the message of, hey, we're not perfect. And you will get very frustrated as a parent. And it's okay. That's your true emotions as well.
I mean, it really is kind of crazy how similar our stories are, right? Your story, my story as parents, our kids' stories. I mean, not just the name of the illness, if it's general anxiety disorder or whatever it is, but just the specifics of it. And it's like if I was a psychologist and I wanted to diagnose a kid with general anxiety disorder, I would say, when was the last time you slept over at a friend's house and made it through the night? I think that that's the giveaway. But there was one time, Corey, you know where I'm going with this?
Adam Sterling's house?
Yes. So I went to school with this kid's dad, and Corey's sleeping over at his house. And as soon as the phone rings, it's like, I look at Karen, she looks at me and go, okay, who wants to pick him up? So I went to the door, and Corey's typical explanation to the host was, I have a headache. So I went to the door and I knock on the door and I see this guy I went to high school with who I hadn't seen in ages, right? And I don't know, but I saw him smirking, I think. And I was so mad. I was mad at him. I was mad at Corey. I was mad at me for passing on this terrible illness to him. It was just so obvious to me that everybody kind of knew what was going on.
No, I remember that night well. I remember we were watching. I think there was a Leaf game on. It was a Saturday night. I remember this, and I remember just thinking to myself, I have to be anywhere but here right now. Doesn't matter where it is. I just got to get the hell out of here. And it had nothing to do with him. It had nothing to do with his family. I just wanted to not be there. And I think that may be more of like a symptom of me having suffered from panic attacks for so long, because I've had panic attacks for quite some time. And I think they're a little bit different than general anxiety. I'm not a doctor, maybe I'm wrong, but there are times where I'm feeling great. And next thing I know, I start freaking out and I just got to get out. Wherever I am, I have to be somewhere else. And that's, to me, the difference between having anxiety, where anxiety is, I don't want to eat that hamburger over there because I may get food poisoning from it. And having panic attacks is, I just got to be anywhere but here right now.
Okay, Kaitlin, I hope you don't think I'm being insensitive. I know you won't. But this is actually like really fun for me and really cathartic and a whole bunch of other things, right? You know, it's like the four of us are sharing something that, like, who would have guessed? You know, I bumped in, I mean, I haven't seen Kelly that many times in my life, but who would have guessed that you and I are thinking many of the same things because our kids have suffered from many of the same things. So here's my question to you, Kaitlin, and then to you, Corey. Kaitlin, when you take your temperature, would you take it and you go, I got to do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again until, hopefully sometime, like, it's like, I know I have a fever. Why is the thermometer lying to me?
Yeah, I think that I like to obviously convince myself that I have different ailments or symptoms. And if I don't get that same like reassurance from someone or something, that
right.
It kind of makes me a bit irritated, which is weird because you'd think it would be like calming knowing that I don't have something, but it can be frustrating for that. For sure.
Okay. Another question. And this is,
Do I get to answer this one?
Well, you can answer.
I was just going to say, whenever I had a thermometer and it didn't say the temperature I wanted it to say, I'd hold it over the stove so I could miss school for the day. That's what I would do.
Oh, it was like, okay,
Pretty
Corey,
Yeah.
your temperature is 114. Yeah. So there's two other things, and then I guess we got to wrap it up. But this is just really amazing for me. But when you go for a strep test, when you think, oh my God, I may have strep throat, do you ever, when they say we don't think it's strep throat, do you ever say, okay, well, it's inconclusive, I better do the test again? Do you ever reject what they've said to you?
I don't think I really do that, to be honest. I think that I trust what the doctor is saying enough that I can rationalize what I'm going through to believe them. And sometimes I feel like I'm just so desperate for someone to tell me what is going on that I just will believe what they say.
Yeah. Core?
No, I think when it comes from a doctor, I think when it comes from a doctor, everything is okay. Like if they tell you you don't have this, you don't have that, then I find the reassurance from someone wearing a white coat a lot better than when they're not wearing a white coat. And I mean, like, yeah, sure. I'd probably hope that it was strep throat, because at least you get that yummy banana medicine when it's strep throat. But yeah, I guess.
Core. Come on, this is a show where honesty dominates.
What, you think
everything.
I'm lying?
I don't think you're lying. I think you're I don't know, but Care, is it not true, Care, that you would go for a strep throat, and when you came home or we were there with you, you would always say, they said it's inconclusive. You have not.
I don't think that ever happened once.
Care?
I don't remember this happening at all.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a question. I got a question for Kelly. How many you played a long time in the NHL?
Yeah.
As a goalie, what is the worst feeling that you can have? I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay. Well, I can tell you firsthand, I went through a time in my life where I dealt with mental health issues. I didn't know it at the time, but now I clearly recognize what I was going through. And at that point, my low point was I thought my career was coming to a screeching halt. I felt ashamed of my play. I'll be really honest, and I did actually share this story in my book, that when I felt really great going into every game, like really confident, even in this stretch where I was terrible for 2 months. But the moment the first bad thing happened, when I let in that first goal, I just felt like, and Corey, you're young, I don't know if you know the cartoon, The Flintstones, and Fred Flintstone worked at a quarry. And when Mr. Slate, his boss, was mad at him, he'd call him into the office and he'd give Fred Flintstone heck, and Fred Flintstone would shrink and shrink and shrink in his chair all the time. I'm serious. I was an NHL goalie playing on maybe the world's most popular team, not the best team, but most popular because of Wayne. And I'm there in the second and third period thinking I feel like Fred Flintstone, and I feel this big in the net. So that's how low I was.
I just got to admire your use of the Flintstones because everybody has watched the Flintstones. Everybody has watched it. At one time, well, actually, I talked about it this morning on the radio, how bizarre it was and how it was such a different time. And there was nothing that could be in any reference to anything sexual. So they, Fred and Wilma slept in separate beds.
Right.
But the twisted world that they lived in, when that was a primetime show, which the Flintstones was launched originally as a show for adults, as a cartoon for adults. The sponsor was Winston cigarettes, and they would have Fred smoking a cigarette, going, the cool taste of Winston. So you had to put the parents in opposite in different beds, because you couldn't ever suggest that maybe they're engaging in sex, and yet cigarettes. No problem.
That's totally fine.
I had this great analogy worked out where I was gonna throw it at you. I said, what's the worst feeling you can have as a goalie? And I thought you were gonna say when you can't find the puck, when you have no idea. Your answer was way better, obviously, but I thought you were gonna say when you have no idea where the puck is and your heart starts racing. And I was gonna say that is the way that someone who has anxiety feels all the time, where everything seems like it's out of control. And your mind starts racing, your heart starts beating. And that's the way I feel when I think to myself, oh, I must have a brain tumor or something. It's not a good feeling.
So maybe I can explain that. Maybe that's why I was okay playing goal, because at the time, for most of my life, I don't think I had any anxiety until much later when things started to bother me. But during a game for a goaltender, you would be surprised how often you lose sight of the puck. Like, you are trying to track that thing like crazy throughout the course of a game, and there are stretches where you do not see it. And so you have to stay calm in that. And boy, your brain better not get in the way, or else you're in bigger trouble.
I love the fact that that we are all getting. I love the fact that you guys met my son, and I love the fact that he met you. I love the fact that he could tell you, Kelly Hrudey, man, I hated you in 1993.
I hated you so much.
But that's a compliment, right? Like, when the opposition hates you, it's because you beat them. No one hates the quarterback on the opposing team if the team that you like beats them, right?
Exactly. Totally. I get that in Toronto a lot, actually. People come up to me on the street. I might be walking to the studio and they'll go, I still hate you from 93. And I'm like, thank you. That's very nice. Thanks.
Thank you. I got one final question for you. This would be for you, Kelly. Do Kaitlin's siblings have to ever hide when they were sick? Ever have to cover up the fact that they were sick so Kaitlin wouldn't find out?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think we had to minimize what they were going through. I had never really thought about that, at least not in a long time, Michael. So that's a very fascinating question. And yes, I do believe there were times where we had to sort of suggest to Kaitlin that they may be just a little bit under the weather or something, but the symptoms or the diagnosis might be more severe. Great question.
Kaitlin, do you recall your parents minimizing?
That's actually the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was actually going on, but I never felt like my sisters were in grave danger or that I had to worry about catching what they had or anything.
Okay, here's what I want you to do, Kaitlin. Look at your dad and say these words. Dad?
Dad?
What else have you lied to me about? Corey will he knows where I'm going, because we used to stash Casey away in the basement, right? Because if Corey found out that Casey was sick, even if she had a cold, it would be like, oh my God, it would just, the wheels would come off the bus. So we used to stash her downstairs, and Corey would go, where's Casey? And we would go, oh, she went to school early. Like, what kid ever, it was such a bizarre lie, but he bought it.
I guess I wasn't that smart. What can I say?
I guess.
And you would see, this is the problem. And you lose credibility quite quickly when you do that, even though you're doing it for my best interest. The second I found out about it, it made it even worse, because then I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, how often are they lying about this? Every time I wake up and walk out that front door, am I at risk of touching the same doorknob that she touched, where she's sick and then I'm going to catch it? Like that. So it actually doesn't help when you do that, even though you're trying to do it for my best interest.
You have no idea how many times we did that. But what's funny, not funny, but funny, is that, when Casey was young, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but Casey had a serious illness that we never deceived you about. It was like, because it wasn't in your wheelhouse to worry about that, because A, it wasn't contagious, and B, you would know instantly if you had it.
Yep. And I was selfish, so I couldn't catch it, so I was okay. As long as I couldn't catch it, I was good.
Okay, well, this was great fun and very therapeutic for I think all of us. I told you when I met Kaitlin, I guess like 5 years ago, that I thought she was awesome, Kelly, and nothing that I have seen or heard since has done anything but confirm for me that she's amazing.
I just love our families, Michael and Corey and Casey, and how we get along and we talk openly about this. I just want to leave you one last thing, Michael, about.
Wait a sec. You're leaving me with that? What, all of a sudden now you're directing the show? Like,
Where you gotta go?
Yo, look at me. I'm Kaitlin Hrudey. I work on Hockey Night in Canada, and you had a stinking career on.
From Toronto right now.
And you were on cable, Michael. So yeah, I'm going to tell you what to do. Go ahead.
No, so these conversations are amazing, and you started the ball rolling for so many of us, and with Bell Let's Talk and so on. I told you this last time, but here's another great story. So I did another radio show in the States on Monday, and this morning I get a phone call message from Tom McVie, the legendary NHL coach and scout and all that, and he's talking to me about mental health. And this is a beautiful thing I want to end on. How great, two grown men, Tom's 84, I'm almost 60, and we're sharing this story about mental health. And seriously, 10 years ago, that was not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in the story. I thought it was going to revolve around me.
I know you did.
Yeah, I thought, oh, stop. Oh, I know, Tom, I love that guy. Okay, let me say a few things and then we'll say goodbye. First of all, thanks to, I don't mention this every show, but Janssen is a company that we went to them and said, hey, we want to do something. And they said, okay, we can't tell you what to do with the money. We don't want recognition, like literally don't want recognition. But that makes you want to recognize them all the more. And they said, do something good with the money. And that's what this show is. And so thanks to Janssen. And thanks to Sally Pepper Taylor, who is one of our minions, I think, one of our volunteers on social media. She did this picture of our dog Wrigley, and it's actually really good. I mean, I didn't mean that to sound like I'm that surprised, but it's really good. And Sally, thank you for that. And guys, let's talk soon. I know we're, kind of like you and I are brothers, Kelly, and I'm a pseudo dad to Kaitlin. So don't bother. You don't have to invite me to the wedding. I understand that. I'm okay with that. But, should you happen to change your mind. Kaitlin, thanks so much. And it's just so lovely to see you smiling and in a good place in your life. And nice to see you.
Great seeing you too. Thank you for having us.
Kel, I'll talk to you soon, man.
You got it, bud. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. And Cor, this was great. This was it was just a really cool experience. I'm sure Kelly is feeling it right now. He can't hear me because he's he's clicked off. I was kind of disappointed in Kelly, to be honest with you. I think he carries this Hockey Night in Canada swagger, like, like I'm so much above TSN and basic cable. But I'm sure that Kelly felt, as I did, incredibly proud. And incredibly joyous also to realize that kind of like, hey, you know what? He made it in the case of my son, and in the case of Kaitlin, like you made it, like you're a normal functioning adult. And I can tell you that my wife and I were convinced that Corey would never be that.
Thanks.
Corey, thanks.
That makes me feel real good. And I also have a picture of Carl as well, a hand-drawn picture of him as Napoleon. I ordered it on off of Facebook.
I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Cor.
Hey, I've taken up a new hobby as well. Drawing. Here's my picture.
Oh.
What do you think? How'd I do?
That is the face of depression, I think.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Put a stinking mask on the stick figure, because those of us with depression wear the mask so we don't suck the life out of the people around us. Love you both, Cor. Love you even more than I love them. And we'll see you tomorrow on Isolation Nation. Case, who's on tomorrow? To be determined. I know we're weighing many, many options. This has been, I can't imagine anybody actually watched the entire show, but if you did, we hope you enjoyed it even this much close to what we did. We'll see you tomorrow. Roll it, Phil.